you're a senior now, so that's exciting. Do you have any plans for after lacrosse season is over, or where's your head at with all of that?
Yeah, so once the season ends and obviously I graduate from this great university, I'm actually going on a classic Europe trip. I feel like every person does that when they graduate college. So doing that with my friends, and then the real world starts, as my mom would say. I'm excited for this summer. I'll be going back home to Virginia and continuing to make YouTube videos. Be traveling to a bunch of lacrosse tournaments, a bunch of camps, making videos with a bunch of creators, a bunch of athletes. So I'm really excited for this summer. I think that's going to be a true test to who I am and the content I create. And the ultimate goal is to go to New York City in October and continue to create YouTube videos and go down this content path.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'm glad that all of this has opened up a lot of doors for you, like long term. And I think
Yeah.
you've done a great job and you've created a great following throughout your college career. It kind of leads into my first question. Like, you got to see the NIL changes firsthand from when you came in. NIL wasn't a thing, but you were still making YouTube videos to
Yeah.
going through July 1st and all of that. So, how has name, image, and likeness made an impact on you so far?
Oof, I mean, I feel like I owe the world to it. Like I feel like I created content for my first, 4 years of my career was when I was a freshman to senior year in high school. Selling merchandise, making money through the platform of YouTube and no restrictions at all. Then when I got to Ohio State and started to become a student athlete, like I had to shut everything down just because of the fact that I was playing lacrosse at Ohio State. And it wasn't an Ohio State thing, it was an NCAA thing. And then kept creating videos and the hardest part wasn't making money. It was not being able to create freely. Like I was so restricted in like creating content inside this box that like it was really just like, hey, you can kind of create content in your dorm room and that's really it. And then July 1st, 21 happened and it really opened up every door possible for me. Like if NIL didn't happen, I truthfully don't know if I would still be making videos or what I'd really be doing because again, not from the money perspective, just from the creative perspective, NIL opened this door that I could start creating freely again, and it's helped me, take this brand to where I want it to be. And in pre NIL, I wouldn't be able to do that.
For sure. And you've done a great job with it so far. And again, like I said, glad that it's opened up so many opportunities. And like you've been at Ohio State since day one of your college career, which is
Yeah,
crazy to think about. That's like really rare nowadays in college athletics with the
yeah.
transfer portal and all of that. So, how has Ohio State like supported you throughout this NIL journey and what resources have they provided you throughout your time as a college athlete?
Yeah, so I think just the school as a university, we're always a step ahead. I feel like our head AD, Gene Smith here, is like one of my idols. Like I look up to that guy in a lot of facets of life. I think the way he is with his family, it's the way he carries himself, to the way he manages, all 36 sports, all 1,000 athletes here at Ohio State is truly incredible. And I just think Ohio State, like I said, is always a step ahead. When NIL first got announced in July 1, they already had a plan rolled out. Like they're going to do this, this, and that. Like we're going to continue to talk about this and how can we make this space better. And I just think, having the resources, like we're going to dive into this NIL thing instead of taking a step back that I felt a lot of universities have. So giving us the freedom to make content about our sport or athletics here at Ohio State, or recently talking with different donors and figuring out as far as like, hey, like can we potentially build a media center so athletes can use like, hey, what do we need in that center? Talking with current athletes to figure out what future athletes want. And I just think that's one of the biggest parts is like getting athletes involved, asking them the questions instead of trying to figure it out on their own. Because obviously, we as the athletes are the one that's going to drive this whole thing. And I just think Gene Smith, and especially just the university as a whole, has just been so open hearted with NIL and really asking the right questions. And I feel a lot of universities just haven't.
Yeah, Ohio State seems to have a great community and they're definitely leaders in this space. And that leads into like how has the greater Columbus community like tapped into NIL and how have you leaned into the local community for NIL opportunities?
Yeah, so I think as far as me and local opportunities, I haven't done a ton. I've worked with our local Roots. If you've been to that restaurant, I don't know if they have them where you are, but they opened one last December or a year and a half ago. And we figured out a brand partnership there on opening day, which was really fun. I've worked with a couple, daily Columbus, different relatively local newspapers and websites to do articles on myself. But I think as far as other student athletes, like there's so many different opportunities, right? Canes is the sponsor of the football team. A lot of the football guys have done stuff with them. TurboTax is just here. I saw a bunch of athletes do stuff with them. And I just think, the Block O carries so much pride that there's so much opportunity locally and nationally.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. And like you said, like when you're at a big university like that, like the national opportunities right off the bat are definitely there. And then also
Yeah.
Columbus, I would say they would house a lot of big national businesses too. So I guess backtracking a little bit, I know that your
Yep.
first NIL deal was through Open Doors. So maybe walk me through the experience of getting your first NIL deal and
Yeah.
maybe some of the emotions or reactions that came with that.
Yeah, it's super surreal. I still remember I actually made a little, I call it a vertical video about it probably last month. But so NIL obviously opened July 1, 2021. And I knew Open Doors was going to be like a huge platform to really allow athletes to monetize in the NIL space, right? For me and a bunch of athletes at the time, we needed a secure place that we knew, hey, we don't have to look at the contracts, it's all laid out here. There's no gray area. It's black and white. You're doing this for this amount of money and it's easy. And I think Open Doors really captured my audience or captured me there and really made me realize like, hey, this is a platform I want to go with. So I signed up as soon as July 1 happened. And I remember a couple days later, I think it was like July 7th, I got a notification. I was like, hey, Degree has offered you a potential brand deal. And I look at it and I was like, wow, like it was, a post or a story or two posts and two stories for $4,000. And I was like, holy crap, like you can make this amount of money. And obviously now the brand deals I'm doing currently, like it looks back and it makes me put it in perspective, which is like how far I've come. And I think the hard work's definitely paying off now with the deliverables and the brands I'm working with and the money I'm seeing. But at the same time, like every first creator has that moment of like, oh my God, I can make this amount of money. And it's just really surreal. And I think, to work with a brand that I was already using, like I still use Degree deodorant. And I think the product fit was already there. So there was no stress with that. So super surreal and moment I'll never forget for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I saw your video recently. It was going around
Yeah.
our little open door Slack channel too. Like, hey, look what
Yeah. I
Mitchell just
love that.
posted. So we liked
That's
that.
cool. Thank you.
We were hyping you up in our Slack channel. So that was
Awesome.
great, and I was glad that you were able to share that experience. And I guess kind of like I don't know, kind of like a fun question I have on the sheet. Like, if you received $1,000 from an NIL deal, how would you spend that? But like for that first $4,000 from the degree post, like where did that money go right off the bat?
Yeah, so I'd say as far as that first 4,000, I went straight into buying a new camera. Like I've always had this long-term vision of me in social media, and I think that's where I separate myself with other athletes. I think athletes will be like, hey, in my 4 years, how can I maximize it? And then I'll go on to, you know, my major job. But I think for me, it was always how can I continue to build this thing up because this is the thing that I'll be doing for the rest of my life, putting food on the table for my family. How can I make that better? And at the time, it was my camera. I just knew I needed to buy a new camera, and I bought the top of the line, the Sony A7S Mark III that cost around 3,000, and the lens was about 1,000. So right then and there, I was back to even, but I just knew I'd make it back with a nice camera and microphone, and the ideas were already there, but I thought the quality was lacking, and I just knew reinvesting in the business has always been the mindset. I still do that today. If I got $1,000 from a brand today, I'd go right into the business and put that towards, my editor, my thumbnail designer, my merchandise designer, just something back into the business. I think I'm at a great spot in life where stacking as much capital as I can is important, right? Like I'm at college, I'm on a scholarship, my parents are paying for my rent. The only thing I'm really paying for is groceries. This is the time to really stack capital. So then when I go to New York, I have that kind of comfort zone to spend, obviously with money coming in as we continue to grow.
Yeah, reinvestment is huge, right? And I think
Yep,
for us too, like trying to get athletes to think about that more and more is something that we've continued to push, especially
yep.
athletes that are already on like full scholarship. It's like, all right, like really think about how you're
So
reinvesting
important.
this money. Like it is important, and it's like it gives you a lot of financial freedom. I think we've seen in the past a lot of athletes come out of college, especially those either on non-scholarship or they weren't working through school, etc. And they're like, I don't know what to do. Like I have no idea how to manage my money at all. So trying to get athletes to like kind of understand this, and it's like, okay, like you now can save and invest, and we have a
Yeah.
partnership with US Bank and they do a really good job about that. But I'm glad you brought it up, and it's nice to see from a student athlete perspective that student athletes are actually taking that advice and doing that.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I just think from at the end of the day, athletes are going to put in as much time as they want. If they want to learn a lot, they'll put a lot in. If they want to make a lot of money, they have to put a lot of effort into the NIL space. I just think something with me, it's like, you know, I see myself doing this so long term that I looked into, okay, like where should I put my money as far as the stock market? Should I open up a Roth? Should I open up a SEP because I'm be working for myself? Like, what does that look like? And I just think those are the type of questions that are mandatory, like figuring out exactly, okay, what is taxes? Taxes was, 2 or 3 days ago, I just had to pay. Definitely wasn't fun, but I'm glad I know about it because um, a year ago I was just given, a couple thousand to the Uncle Sam, and that was really it. But now I know exactly where my money is going. I think that's an important part of a early entrepreneur's career.
100% agree with that. I was part of H&R Block's recent campaign, and it was like very interesting to see like the tax side of things from an NIL
Yep,
perspective. It's like I've obviously worked and just seeing the difference between like 1099s and W-2s and like all these different tax documents that you can have. And then if you have
yeah,
an LLC, how things like play a different role too. Like it's all like very confusing. And I think for a lot of athletes too, it's like NIL is probably the first time most of these athletes have had to file taxes, one. And like for a lot of athletes too, especially freshmen and sophomores coming in, like this might be the first time that they've ever made money. So
hmm
I don't know. It's kind of like interesting from that
yeah,
perspective too.
definitely, it's
And
very interesting.
it leads into like my next question too. Like, what's been the hardest part for you about navigating all of these NIL opportunities?
I feel like navigating hasn't been tough for me at all. Like I look at the brand, I look at the product that they want me to sell. I look at, who's working there. I try to talk to as many people as I can. And I just see is it at the end of the day, is it a brand product fit with Mitchell Pehlke? And if it is, then we take a step further and, kind of look at the price and the deliverable and kind of what their ask is. And if it's not, you just got to move on. And I think the hardest part was getting over that, hey, like this doesn't fit the brand, but they're paying a lot where it's really the only thing keeping me in it. But at the end of the day, again, I'm not in here to make quick couple bucks in my 4 years. Like this is going to be a brand that I continue to build for the next 20 years. And I think that's the question needs to be happening. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I was like, when NAL first happened, you saw all these top athletes post stuff with like these brands that like you just knew they didn't use or know about. And I think that's definitely came down because it's people are getting educated in the space. But like, I never want that to be my MO. I never want people to sell or some, I don't never want people to buy something I'm promoting. Same thing with my merchandise. Like, I'm promoting my merchandise because I think it's funny. I think it's a great quality t-shirt apparel, and I'm going to continue to wear it. And I think just continuing to like not be fake. Like Danny Duncan is a big YouTuber and I really look up after him in the way that like he just does him, doesn't worry about what people say, and continues to like sell to his audience what he loves. And I always have like I just have always kind of looked up to that sort of idea on content creation and brand partnerships because which type of person are you to be promoting something you don't even like? I just don't think it's the right way to go about it.
That's a great way to look at it. And I think for a lot of athletes too, for their first couple of NIL deals, they're like, I'll partner with other whatever brand to get it started. But
Yeah.
then as we see athletes like establishing themselves more and more, like you can say no to NIL deals. And I think that's
Yep.
definitely been a really hard shift for athletes where they're like, oh, I can actually like say no to this stuff if it doesn't align. So again, glad you called that out. And with
Yeah.
you taking a lot of this content creation and your business going forward and past graduation, like what are some life lessons that you've learned from NIL that you'll take into your future career after graduation?
I mean, really everything. I think, especially on the money side, like I said beforehand, I was making some money in high school, but nothing to what I'm making now and the opportunities I'm getting now. I think again, from the LLC side, opening that up, from the tax side, from the credit side, like all this stuff I've learned in these quick 2 years that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. I think the content's always been with me. I don't think I necessarily learned that in college, but obviously that's going to be the vehicle that drives everything. I think learning, I think in this 2 years of college, I feel like I've learned so much. I'm working on a camp right now. That's a whole new can of worms, but it's like a good can, right? Like I'm investing back in the business. I started my merchandise 4 months ago, and it feels like I've been with it in a year because I've learned so much. And I just think always continuing to build this brand and getting out of my comfort zone, really, I think that's a huge one. Like this camp thing has been very stressful, but I know at the end of the day, however many campers I get, I'm going to make their year by putting on this Mitchell Pehlke experience. But also, it's going to go back into business and allow me to then use that capital to dive into different genres of business that I want to dive into. So I think as far as things I've learned in the business, like I've learned so much. I think one of the biggest things is just how to like manage my time. Like I truthfully don't think, maybe when I have kids, but I truthfully don't think it's gonna get it can get more stressful than it is right now with school, family, friends, academics, and so many aspects of this business. I think obviously playing a sport, and you know this, Sydney, you're already kind of at fault with time, and I think it's never going to be this hard when I graduate. So I'm excited, but also sad for that next chapter of I'm going to be done playing lacrosse and done with Ohio State, but I'm truly excited to just kind of see what that next stage and steps are for Mitchell Pelkey.
Yeah, and the time management aspect I think is often overlooked by a lot of brands and just the general public, like in general, right? It's like as an athlete, you're practicing at least 20 hours a week that I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
people necessarily recognize or see. And then when you're in season, the traveling is even more. It's like for me over the past month, it's like, oh shoot, we're traveling like every other weekend, halfway
Yeah.
across the country. So trying to find like that time and space too. But I'm glad you called that out as well. But it's exciting that you're doing a camp. Like I think this summer is going to be a really big one for camps and lessons overall, and
Yeah.
glad that you're jumping into that space too, just because I think it does make a difference in going back to the community aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, I think it was something that's always kind of been on my bucket list, but I think at the same time I've always kind of put it on the back burner just because I knew it required a lot of time. And I was just like, hey, like I don't really know what next summer looks like, but I know what this summer is going to look like, and it's going to have at least one, potentially two, potentially three Mitchell Pelkey camps. And I was like, hey, I want to get back. Like, the best part about this career is meeting my fans and people in person, wearing my merch. And I think, going to an event where obviously everybody knows who I am, plus learning how to play better lacrosse is something I'm truly passionate about and can't wait for this summer.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I'm glad that you're doing that. And we actually have an open doors blog on like how to run a sports camp if you want to check that out at
Oh
all. I can
yeah,
send it
send that
over
my
here.
way. That
But
would be really
yeah,
interesting
it's
to
kind of
to
like a
read about.
checklist of all the needs and things that you. I think there's a lot of like little nitty gritty details,
Yeah, there's
but
definitely little things you got to think about. I feel like my time with you guys is, I guess, is really kind of coming to an end because my college career's closing that chapter. But I just want to say thank you for everything you guys have offered, from my first brand new to my last. Like it's been a fun experience with you guys. So I just want to say thank you.